Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show how to create a time series plot in Excel 365. So a time series plot or a time series graph, or sometimes just a time plot, this is a graph that displays one or more quantitative variables that are specifically tracked over time. So I have an example data set here. You'll see in the first column, column A, the title is month, and we have a list of months from January 2022 up to December 2023. And then in the second column, the title is sales in US dollars, and these are sales amounts for some sort of retail establishment for each of these months. These are just made up data just to give us something to look at. So I do want to note that your times, the first column should be some sort of times, whether these are months or years, specific dates. They could even be times like in minutes or something like that. But however these are formatted, Excel displays time and dates in a lot of different ways. So right now these months and years are using this format of a 3-digit month and a 2-digit year with a dash in the middle. If I click on this cell over here, you'll see in the formula bar that this is the same thing, or Excel is interpreting this as the same thing as 1/1/2022, even though it's displaying January-2022. Or it could be just a text value. Here I have January written out, 2022. This is just text. Or it could be formatted as a date like this. If you format your dates, or if Excel is interpreting your inputs as dates, if you go to the Home tab under Number, you'll likely see the formatting as date or maybe as custom, and you can change it to fit what other type of date makes sense for your data. But ideally we want these X variables or the time variables to represent, be written as a date or as a time format or as just text. If it's a number, we can run into some problems with the graphing that I'll show you in a minute. So I have this list of months and then the sales values for each month. If I want to create a time series, I'm going to highlight both columns together, including their column titles. And then I'm going to go to the Insert tab in the ribbon, and I'm going to go to this Insert Line or Area Chart option under Charts. And if I click the drop down, there's a few different types of line graphs here. You can use the first one, which is just a regular line graph, or my favorite to use for a time series is this Line with Markers option. So you'll see that on the horizontal axis, it's placing my times, my months and years. The spacing here is not labeling every single month. It looks like it's labeling every other month. If I need it to label all the months, I could resize my graph and give it a little more space to label those. And then the points on the graph that correspond to each of those dates and years represent the height of those points, represent the sales. So the vertical axis here represents sales in US dollars. I should add labels to both of these axes, which I will do in a moment, and as well as give this graph a better title. But we can see dots for each one of these months over the 2 years, as well as the sales figures tracking this over time. So the time series graph allows us to see where are these values increasing, where are they decreasing, do we have any sudden jumps or trends. These sales figures are trending up slightly, but we have some ups and downs probably with seasonal variation in sales. So I'm going to rename this graph a title Retail Sales, and then under the Chart Design tab, I'm going to go to the Add Chart Element button and add axis titles. So I want both a primary vertical and a primary horizontal axis title so I can label what both of these represent. So I've labeled the horizontal axis time. That's kind of obvious based on the dates, but it's always good to have a title for your axes. And then the vertical axis I've labeled sales, parentheses, USD or US dollars. Whatever your quantity is, it's good to have units, if there are any units, and a description of what this is plotting. That's really all that there is for a time series graph. But sometimes Excel can be a little bit funky with these graphs, so I'll show you another example. Here I took actually just some of the same sales figures, so these are just made up again. But here I'm imagining that these sales figures came from individual years. Now Excel is going to see these years as numbers, and if I highlight both columns just like before, my column with my years and my column with my sales values, and go to the Insert tab and choose my line graph again, you'll see that it produces this graph that has two different lines on it. The orange line, or the upper line, is the sales figures, plotting those same values that we saw in the previous graph, although just 12 of them. And then it's also plotting a second line, which is actually the years. So my horizontal axis now is just counting the data values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we're plotting both the year and the sales figure as separate data values. So it's interpreting this as two different data sets plotted over a sequence of 12 dots. And that's really not what we want. So sometimes you can avoid this by making sure that you format your times in a date format or in a text format, but sometimes even that doesn't work. So if you do run into this situation, you can click on your chart, go to the Chart Design tab, and choose this Select Data option. On the left-hand side, there's a section that says Legend Entries, parentheses Series, and there's two things listed, year and sales. I want to uncheck year because I don't want it to be graphing the years as dots. And then on the right-hand section, which says Horizontal, parentheses Category, Axis Labels, there's a button right under that says Edit. I'm going to click that button, and it's prompting me to input the axis label range. The labels it's talking about are the labels for the horizontal axis, and I want it to label the horizontal axis with the years. So I'm going to select my cells, in this case the cells going from 2001 to 2012. Those are from my first column. No, I'm not including the heading there. Press OK. This list populates with those labels, and press OK again. And now we'll see that the years are correctly applied along the horizontal axis with my sales values plotted on the line. I'd still want to edit this to add some meaningful titles and labels and whatnot, but just a troubleshooting step if you do run into that effect where Excel's trying to plot two different data sets with your time and values. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.